Hello, pop music lovers, and welcome to my top 10 albums of 2020. For many years, I've always loved counting down to my favorite albums of the year, just like the Billboard charts or the official charts in the UK does. And every year, it kind of gets a little bit harder to find music that I like, that I'm interested in. But this year, despite the pandemic, there's been some absolutely fabulous music put out there. So let's get started. A few months ago, I had about, 7 albums compiled, and I figured this would be a great year. I can finally have a top 10 again. Last year, I had about 4 albums that I loved to listen to, but this year I rounded out to a top 10, kind of filled it up, asked a few people some suggestions, and let's start off. So here we go. My favorite albums of the year. Now, let me say before I start, these are my favorite albums. They're not necessarily based on sales, on popularity, on anything that's old or new. It's what I like, what I think is a great album from sort of start to finish. And not just one song or two songs, but it has great production, great lyrics, great melodies. So here we go. Let's start off with number 10. This is an album I forgot was actually released in the past year because it's almost a year old, released last January, and that is the Pet Shop Boys' Hotspot. This is the last of a trio of albums that Stuart Price has produced for Neil Tennant and Chris Lowe. It's not a bad album. It's a little bit more subdued than their previous work, but there's some great songs on here, especially Side B, I Don't Wanna, Monkey Business, Burning the Heather. The Pet Shop Boys always put out these beautifully wonderful albums, melodic, stuff you could dance to, stuff you can listen to. Pretty nice album, so check it out, the Pet Shop Boys. I do know their tour was canceled this year because of COVID, but I believe they are going to go on doing concert shows next year. So check it out. That is the Pet Shop Boys and Hotspot at number 10. Number 9. As I was looking for albums to round out my top 10, I came across an album that I missed that was released this past summer by British singer Ronan Keating. Now, Ronan was the lead singer of the boy band Boyzone, and I found this album. I still don't actually own the album. I've asked my local record store to order it in for me, but I have listened to it a few times on YouTube, and I love the album. It's really pretty. There's an absolutely fabulous duet on it called One of a Kind with Emily Sandé, another British singer. Go check that out. There's also a tribute ballad to Stephen Gately. Stephen Gately was one of the members of Boyzone that passed away many years ago, and Robbie Williams from another boy band, Take That, actually wrote a song many years ago, and him and Ronan actually recorded it for the brand new album. The album is called 2020, so I have that as my number 9 album. Now let's move on to number 8. This next album was recommended to me by my local record store, and I'm so happy this has entered my top 10 because I think my list would have been so much poorer without it. And it is the only Canadian entry on my list, and it is Rae Jepson's Dedicated Side B. What's interesting about this album is that in 2019, Rae released her album Dedicated. And what she usually does is she'll write about 200 songs and then kind of whittle it down to 12 or 14 that'll make the album. And the rest of them are kind of left on the shelf or in her vault, and they're not usually used. So what she started doing is releasing sort of like a secondary album called Side B. She did it with her album Emotions, and now she's doing it with Dedicated. And I actually like this album better than the main album. You know when you sometimes listen to an album, there's a few good tracks, and then there's some filler in the middle, and then it kind of sort of whittles off. This album stays throughout a great album. Every song is an earworm. She knows how to write a real pop song. Some of my favorite tracks include Let's Sort the Whole Thing Out, which sounds like an old 80s soundtrack song. It does have a bit of an 80s sort of retro feel, which I absolutely love about this album. There's a song Comeback, which features the Bleachers, Solo, Now I Don't Hate California After All. And then there's 2 songs on this album that I absolutely love what she has done. She has shown a bit how she kind of sort of can write a song and then change it up, or maybe make a completely different song and change the beat, the production. Track 3 is called Felt This Way, and it's a great song. And all of a sudden, track 4, it goes into sort of the same song, but with a different sort of beats per minute. Some of the lyrics are different. Both songs are great. And if I would have had to choose which song to put on the album, I don't know what I would have done. And I love the fact that she's one of the few artists to put both versions on the album. So we can sort of see how she kind of puts her songs together and how different they can be. Absolutely excellent album. Thank you, Rae. And there it is, Dedicated Side B. Number 7. And for number 7, we fly off to the UK with the supergroup Steps. and their album, What the Future Holds. I was lucky I got to order one of their albums and get their autographs a few months ago, which was kind of neat. Steps have been around since 1998, 99. They had 3 albums, were quite popular in the UK, in Europe, and Australia. And then they kind of split up, broke up, and came back in 2017 with a beautiful comeback album called Tears on the Dance Floor, which I love. This album is just as good. It's called What the Future Holds. And the title track, the first single, was written by Sia, which is kind of neat. And of course, every Steps album wouldn't be complete with kind of sort of an ABBA-esque track, Something in Your Eyes. One thing that I love about this album, and something that's been kind of missing originally when Steps first released their music, is that you're hearing all 5 singers on the album. Very often in the early years, you would hear Faye and Lisa, and especially Claire, do a lot of the vocals. And the 2 guys, H and Lee, you wouldn't hear them that much. But I really like the fact that you can hear all their vocals on here. You can hear the guys. There's a beautiful ballad at the end called Hold My Heart. So that's it. It's Steps and What the Future Holds. Number 6. For the next album on my list, many of my friends who know me, people who know my musical taste, will probably be a little bit surprised that the one and only Miley Cyrus made it to my top 10 list of the year with Plastic Hearts. If you haven't heard this album, go check it out. If you're a fan of the 80s, if you grew up in the 80s, check it out. It is almost like a love letter to sort of, I would say, not the late 80s, but the early 80s, kind of like Stevie Nicks, Debbie Harry, that kind of vein, Pat Benatar. Absolutely great album. She actually there's 3 duets on the album that I absolutely love. There is a duet with Billy Idol called Nightcrawler, which is great. There's a duet with Joan Jett called Bad Karma. Then there's a Dua Lipa duet that's absolutely fantastic. Prisoner, that sounds like an old 80s tune. I think one of my favorite tracks kind of sounds like a bit of a Beatles-esque song. It's called Angels Like You. I don't really think there's like a bad song on the album. And that's something I've noticed this year that I really, really like, is I found a lot of singers are doing what I call pruning. They're pruning their albums. Back in the day, in the 80s and the 70s, you could only fit so many tracks on a vinyl, and you had to sort of whittle it down to about 10, 12, maybe 14 tracks. And then something changed when CDs came out. You could fit so much music on an album. You wanted to give your fans tons of music, and you'd end up with like 18 tracks and 16 tracks. And sometimes some of the songs were good, sometimes they were okay, but it would kind of break the flow of actually doing a really concise, really nice album. And that's one of the things I love. This too has like just 12 tracks on it, and it's absolutely excellent. Good on you, Miley. Some of you might have heard Midnight Sky, which sort of interpolates or samples Stevie Nicks, which is a great song, has a great video. So I never thought I would actually have Hannah Montana on my list, but you know what? She's a great vocalist. Love her voice. This is absolutely beautiful, and I would pay to see a concert of just these songs. So bravo on you, Miley. I love it. And this photograph is beautiful. I can't remember who the name of the photographer, but it's the same photographer that would photograph Debbie Harry and a lot of other stars in the 80s. I'll put his name up. I'll post it up. But really beautiful. I love it. So there you go. I'll move on. So all I want for Christmas, do you know what I want for Christmas? I wanted a absolutely fabulous Mariah Carey album. I have not bought a Mariah Carey album since I think 2005 or 2006 when The Emancipation of Mimi came out. And this is my first Mariah Carey album in how many years? Rarities. If you are a Mariah Carey fan, if you were a Mariah Carey fan and kind of didn't like the music she was doing afterwards, you have to go check out this album. A lot of people kind of passed it over. A lot of the record stores didn't stock it. I had to order it from my record store because they kind of didn't want to keep an album called, I guess, Rarities. But it is an album that's compiled of songs that, again, didn't make her albums, kind of like a B-side album, a bit like the Carly Rae Jepsen I was talking about earlier. So these are tracks that either her ex-husband Tommy Mottola didn't like. He said they were too R&B. Songs that perhaps maybe she didn't finish, or songs that ended up as B-sides. I never collected her singles, so there's 2 fabulous B-side songs on here. If you've never heard them, they're really quite good. And songs that didn't quite fit the albums. This is her best album in like 15 or 20 years. As soon as you put the record on, the first song, and this goes way back, it goes right back to 1990 when her first album came out. The first track, Here We Go Again, is, I think it's like one of my favorite songs of hers. It sounds like a long lost Motown Jackson 5 album. I don't know how this song didn't end up on her first album or even her second album, Emotions. It is like hearing, first of all, you get to hear Mariah Carey's voice back in her prime. She still sounds great, you know, don't deny that. But it's like, here we go around again, amazing. And there's a song she wrote, or she was trying to write for Barbra Streisand called Can You Hear Me? There's a few B-sides. You also get the infamous song Loverboy, the original version. I'm not going to go into the whole story, but while Mariah Carey was recording the song Loverboy for her album Glitter, the sample that was used in that was also used in a song for J-Lo, and it came out before Mariah's song, and I won't get into the whole thing. There was a whole big fight over that. So this is the original version of Loverboy, which has the sample, and quite frankly, I think J-Lo and Tommy Mottola did her a favor because the version that was released, I actually prefer it. I forget what the track is now that they sampled. Oh, it's Candy by Cameo. And I think it actually works better than the original sample track they were using for this song. Also on here is her cover of Out Here on My Own, the Irene Cara song, I believe from the film Fame. It's a great version of that song. Even some of the later tracks that were sort of just after the emancipation of Mimi, there's a song called Cool on You, the song where she's like shading somebody. Absolutely fabulous. Mesmerized from 2012, which is great. And then there's this new song that she was sort of writing a few years ago and finally finished, which samples sort of Lauryn Hill, Save the Day. I don't know why that wasn't a bigger hit this year. And Close My Eyes, a different version, sort of a more acoustic version of the song that's on her album Butterfly. Go check this out. And to make this even more enticing, this would have still made my list at, so where are we? We're at number 5. I don't even know if I mentioned this was number 5 on my list. But I still would have put it there for just the album. It's worth it. But with this, you also get a second disc. And this is her infamous concert live at the Tokyo Dome in 1996. Fabulous concert. You get the audio for that. Totally worth it for like, I don't know, $15, $16, maybe $20. So that's it. Thank you, Mariah Carey, for putting out this treasure trove of songs that maybe we might have not heard. I would love to hear more from the vault. Excellent album. Go check it out. At number 5, Mariah Carey. Number 4. One of the things I loved about this year, despite the pandemic, is that many of my favorite artists were putting out these wonderful feel-good albums, dance floor albums. A lot of us can't go out, we can't go out to bars, we can't go out to dance clubs, so we can have sort of our own party in our living room. And one of the first ones that came out this year was Lady Gaga's Chromatica. Now this is the vinyl that came out, this sort of see-through vinyl. And this is sort of Lady Gaga back to what she's doing best. It's her dancing on the dance floor, putting out lyrics that are important and issues that she wants to speak about. Fantastic album. There was a big #1 hit, the duet with Ariana Grande, Rain on Me, Stupid Love. Some of my favorite songs weren't even released as singles, and I was kind of hoping she would have released some of them. And that was Fun Tonight is like a great track. Sign from Up Above with Elton John, which I love, and 1,000 Doves. I don't know why that wasn't a single. Great album from start to finish. There's no filler on this album. It's fabulous. Go check it out. Lady Gaga back at the top of her game with Chromatica. We're getting close. We're at number 3. And this is the one album that kind of changes its vein from the rest of my list. I'm usually a person that loves sort of heavy pop music, dance music, club music, EDM music. And I don't know, this album came along this year. It was a surprise. I've bought her albums before, but oh my God, Taylor Swift, what did you do? What have you done to me? I guess is what I should say. And I mean, it's no surprise. The album is Folklore. The album is up for Best Album of the Year, I think Best Pop Album of the Year. And, you know, one of my coworkers at work got me onto Taylor Swift. I bought a few of her albums. I love 1989 and Red. And generally this wouldn't be the music I would like, but oh my God, this is her, what I would call the equivalent, her Listen Without Prejudice. like her George Mike, which is a George Michael album, or I don't want to say Bruce Springsteen's Nebraska because it's not really that, but this is absolutely fabulous album she did during the pandemic. And I don't know what to say about this. It is just fabulous. I first heard, my favorite song is the song Betty. I heard that song. It's what made me go out and buy this album. I think it's one of the best songs she's ever done. I love the fact that it's written as a boy's point of view. It's kind of a little bit ambiguous. But this album, even from start to finish, is great. It's not the type of album you want to listen to and then sort of like boogie around to, but it is something that you want to put on with your headphones. You want to hear with sort of like really good equipment. I was listening to this where I work in a store and it doesn't quite sound great, but in my headphones it sounds absolutely fabulous. As I said, my favorite track is Betty. Then there's The Last Great American Dynasty. I know most people don't put the song at the top of the list, but I love when Taylor tells a story. And the story might be about somebody else. It doesn't always have to be about her and who she went out with. But The Last Great American Dynasty, it almost sounds like the song is written for a movie, and I'd love to see a movie about it. Beautiful song, which I believe is about the house she bought and kind of what happened in that house in earlier years. A lot of people love the song, which has the duet with Bon Iver, Exile. But there's Mirror Ball, 7, August, beautiful album that she's worked on. And I don't know, bravo. I don't know what to say about this. I think this is an opus for her. I don't know how she's going to outdo this, but you never know what she's going to do. And she has released a second album. And you know what? I haven't had time to listen to it. I don't know if it would have made my top 10 or not. I think it's kind of hard to top this. So there it is. That was number 3. So here we go. We're almost at the top of my list. And this was actually kind of a little bit difficult because the next 2 albums are my favorite albums of 2020. And I don't just think they're my favorite albums of 2020. I think for a long time to come, they're going to be 2 of my favorite albums. And the album that's at number 2 was going to be my number 1 album this year. When I first heard it, I just ran out and bought it. It is a throwback to the 1970s. I wasn't too aware of this artist when she came out with her debut album about 2 years ago, but oh my God, Miss Dua Lipa, Future Nostalgia. I heard a few of her songs from her first album, and I was kind of like, okay, this is kind of interesting. She won Best New Artist at the Grammys, but oh my God, this album is, it's again, as I said before, I think I mentioned it's sort of a love letter to the 1970s. I really like the pink vinyl, don't you? Kind of cool. It's probably a reflection from my new light as well too, which is neat. This album from start to finish is absolutely amazing. One of the things that she does so beautifully and effortlessly, and I don't know if it's her or her producers, a lot of people sample songs, interpolate songs into their own songs. And usually it's too much. It doesn't quite work. It's sort of the whole groove of the song. And then you're like, well, why didn't they just cover the song? Well, Dua Lipa, I think, is one of the best artists out there that knows how to integrate a song, another song, into her songs. And it sounds fabulous. You don't realize the song's there. It just sort of enhances it. It doesn't take over the song. And one of the really good examples of that, I believe, is the song Break My Heart, which samples INXS's Need You Tonight. I had absolutely no idea that was in there until I was looking up something on the web or on Wiki, and I noticed that. And if you listen, you'll hear the guitar to Need You Tonight. It is fabulous. But the whole album, Don't Start Now, came out, I think that song almost came out like a year ago. Excellent song. She has Physical, which is also almost like a nod back to the old, I don't know, Pat Benatar, Olivia Newton-John songs. Levitating. My favorite track, though, is Love Again, which samples an old song. I believe it was co-written by Bing Crosby. Is it called My Woman? I absolutely love that track. I wish it would have been a single. Break My Heart is great. Hallucinate. Levitating, which I think she has, not that I think, she re-recorded with Madonna and I forget who else. This album is... It's amazing. It is like the perfect album for 2020. It is up for Album of the Year, Pop Album of the Year. I think it could possibly win one or both. Not sure what's going to happen. But this is an absolutely amazing album. Thank you, Dua Lipa, for releasing this great album when we're in a pandemic. I absolutely love it. And I'll play it to death. If you haven't actually bought the album yet, on vinyl or on CD, she has re-released the album with sort of a remix track, like an extra CD called Club Nostalgia, I think. It is excellent. Usually I don't like modern remixes and stuff, but check it out. If you are going to buy the CD, you might as well buy, like, for $2 more, buy the new edition that has the remixes on it. So that's it for Dua Lipa. Now, it's not going to be a surprise. Number one, actually, both my top two albums could probably tie for number one. I'm probably a bit biased, and you guys have already seen my video dedicated to this album. I've loved this artist since the late 80s and the early 90s. It is Kylie Minogue. There's no surprise. It's her album Magic. Again, it is another album that is dedicated to the sort of disco genre, to Donna Summers, Giorgio Moroder, all those like great stuff from the 80s. There's even shades of Olivia Newton-John. I think both these albums are absolutely fabulous, and they seem to be friends because they've both collaborated on these sort of video concert streams they've done. I know even Kylie has released, I believe, Real Groove with Dua Lipa. She's added her vocals to it. Absolutely fabulous album. What can I say, Kylie? Thank you so much. I think it has been a absolutely excellent year for music. And what I want to know is, I want you to tell me, what is your top 10 albums of the year? Or your top 5, your top 2, your favorite album. Write it down below. If you like my video, please subscribe. I'd love to be able to get to at least 1,000 subscribers. And that's about it. So let me know what you think, and I'll speak to you soon. That's it. Ciao.